You are listening to the On Purpose podcast. There's a moment in every man's life, especially for veterans, first responders, and men called to lead, when the uniform comes off but the mission doesn't end. Too many try to navigate that transition alone without structure, accountability, or brotherhood. That's why I'm proud to partner with Missions Purpose, a community built for men who refuse to drift. Inside the school platform, you get live calls, challenges, frameworks, and disciplined brotherhood that pushes you to rebuild purpose, direction, and daily structure. If you're ready for the next chapter of your mission, click the link in the show notes to join us inside the Missions Purpose community on school. You were never meant to walk this road alone. If you run a business, listen up, because my friend Dr. Elise Rigney just dropped something every entrepreneur needs. Elise is who we trust for our tax strategy, and she put together a free 40-minute breakdown of the new big, beautiful bill that will impact you this tax season. This thing changes a lot. Deductions, depreciation, write-offs, and most business owners won't understand it until it's too late. We've used her strategies ourselves, and they work. So grab her free training at the link in our show notes and get ahead of this bill before it hits your bottom line. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to this week's edition of the On Purpose podcast, where today I'm joined with Anthony Dyer, a former U.S. Air Force Special Missions aviator who spent more than a decade flying high-risk operations around the world. His crew earned the Air Force's Jolly Green Rescue Mission of the Year in 2018, but what really inspired me to bring Anthony on the show is the story that matters most now in his life is one he's telling about off the battlefield. He's the author of a book called Moonchild, a raw and honest memoir about war, trauma, addiction, and a long road to a recovery. And you know how we feel about having these real conversations and getting some of this stuff that lives in the shadows out into the light, not just for our veterans and our first responders, but for anybody that's wondering where life's going and how they got there. And I'm excited to bring Anthony on to help us bring that stuff out of the dark. He's a husband, a father, and he's rebuilding purpose in real time. And he's on here today to explain the journey behind the uniform and the healing that came after it. So, Anthony, my friend, welcome to the On Purpose podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jerrod. I appreciate it, bro.
Dude, it's my honor to have you here. And I first off want to just say thank you, not only for what you did for our country, serving, right, and the stuff you did, special ops pilot. I can only imagine the craziness you got to see in the world and the stuff that we don't even really know what goes on, but we're thankful for it because it allows our country to be our country. But I also really want to applaud you for being willing to come out and share some stuff that other people may not talk about. And that's what goes on in our bodies and our minds after the battlefield. So thank you for having the courage to do that and share that so the rest of us can learn from it.
Thank you. It was a real privilege and honor and flying fight beside the best men and women in the world. And the aviation background, I was an aero gunner. They call it Special Missions Aviator now. And what that means is like the Air Force combined like the aero gunner, the loadmaster, and the flight engineer career field, and then put it all, this one person doing all those tasks on a AC-130 gunship or a Payhawk helicopter in my case as well.
Would you prefer the helicopter or the C-130?
Man, I get asked this a lot, and I always try to be careful. But if I'm being honest, man, so if I'm being honest, like there's nothing better for an enlisted guy flying around on a helicopter shooting the grip and rip, the minigun on some white phosphorus MVGs. But yeah, it was both awesome communities, man. The Spectre, the gunship, and the Jolly Greens and the rescue part of it.
Well, I'll tell you, my only experience with the C-130 is we were training for Mogadishu. It was back when we were in Somalia in the early 90s. And part of the workup is they flew us from Montana down to Arkansas to train. And we sat in the back of that C-130 just laying in the nets because there's no seats or anything. We were in the cargo nets with the headphones. And yeah, every time I see them, I still remember. That was a fun little flight.
Yeah, it was definitely an awesome platform, man. And, it's basically the whole purpose of the gunship is to provide that close air support for, I think I call them super ninjas in the book there, the guys on the ground, your SEALs, your Green Berets, and your Rangers types. And, it was never really about the EKIA stuff for me. It was all about making sure those guys got home to their family. And I was telling someone the other day, man, there's letters around that squadron where, they thank the gunship for the rounds and close air support. And there's one, if I remember right, sort of my cornerstone of my why. I always looked at it, and there was like a ranger holding his baby girl, and he thanks the squadron for the rounds, and he was able to get home to see his baby girl. So it was always, to me that was always my why and my purpose, and when that's gone, that's a hard thing to lose once you get out,
Yeah, let's hold on to that for a second, because Anthony, I like to think of this as like a workout, my friend. I got to warm you up before we get into the heavy stuff. I got to make sure your muscles and your mind's ready to go. So you ready for your warm-up questions?
Sounds good.
All right, here we go. First one, Anthony. What's something you've been learning about yourself lately?
I've been learning that to approach situations with audacity. I came up with a quote. Actually, this is a couple weeks old or whatnot, but I tell people, now that audacity kills doubt and tenacity, it buries it, So whatever you do in life, you can't go into it half-cocked, you got to be willing to go the distance,
I love that. What made you think of that? What was going on in your day?
I was just thinking about something as simple as working out, like getting up right, not hitting the snooze button, going to the gym, and just the intensity of my workout, and like I have all these advantages, and just you got Planet Fitness right down the road, or I got the gym on base, and like why wouldn't I come at that with some tenacity and get the workout that I want my body to have.
I love it. All right, what's a small habit or ritual that's giving you positive energy lately?
I'd definitely say the prayers, first thing we wake up in the morning, as and a prayer I tell people could be as simple as saying, give gratitude for God, for, I'm still vertical this morning, right when I got up, so I'm happy, So.
That's the truth, man. A lot of people, we forget just that simple thing, right? A lot of people didn't make it through the night around the world.
Correct, yeah. That's very true.
Just the fact we're up, man, means we get to recreate a new day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's what's the saying? Die living, so do what you want to do, be bold.
Yeah. All right, what about this one? Who's someone in your life right now that's influencing your thinking or inspiring you?
I would definitely say my wife, she's definitely started teaching. When the whole time I was in, she was a stay-at-home mom, and that's the hardest job in the military is the spouses, and to see her take on this teaching role and just the drive to get her master's and everything that comes with that, to see her perseverance, and still be, the best mom in the world. It's a blessing to see that and witness that,
Yeah, dude, that's so nice, man. I hope she heard that. I'll have to make sure she gets that clip from this episode.
We'll definitely get her for some brownie points, so.
All right, what about this one? When you think about the season you're in right now in your life, what word or phrase best describes it?
I would say right now it's sunny at 75, man. It's no storms at the moment. I know there's always going to be a storm, you can't have life without that. And how, honestly, how boring would life be if it was always sunny at 75,
Dude, I don't know, man. Yeah, I agree with that, but I also I really like sunny at 75. It's pretty easy.
Oh, yeah. yeah. It's definitely comfortable. And, I'm getting to do, things I never thought I could do. Even, public speaking, for example, this conversation, man, a year ago, I'd be terrified to get on here, man, and tripping over my words and, dreading. But now I look forward to these things, man, so I appreciate it.
Dude, I love it. Man, we're honored to have you on the show. That's the whole premise of this, is to get to learn from people and learn with them and share with them and grow. So it's our privilege to have you here, and I'm excited to learn more about you. And I want to start with kind of your early formation, your roots, because you're, if I understand right, you grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, so you're an East Coast mountain guy. How did that environment kind of bring you some of that toughness and stuff to get you through life?
Yeah, I would definitely say I learned at a real, young age that, the saying, no one's coming to rescue you, you have to depend on, yourself. And I tell people you're never really truly alone. You always got God, right? But how to get out of situations and learn the true meaning of perseverance, and to basically, my dad always taught me, don't ever let someone outwork you either, right? Because, they could have more talent than you. They could be smarter, bigger, faster, stronger. But at the end of the day, you can't beat a dude or girl that just works,
Yeah, somebody that doesn't quit, you just can't get ahead of them. It's interesting you say that nobody's coming to rescue you, because part of our travels last year, we were in Virginia, right on the North Carolina border when Hurricane Helene hit Asheville. And so we got to kind of contribute a little bit to the people we were working with there. But that was a phrase I heard so many people saying. It's just like, get your shit. Like, nobody's coming to save you. Like, we got to do this ourselves. And you saw that toughness come together and that sense of community they have out there.
Yeah, I definitely saw that sense of community. There's this. I couldn't talk to my parents for like a week because I'm in New Mexico, and the cell towers went out and stuff like that, and I had to reach out to this lady. The only lady I could find, I did basically a Mayday on Facebook, right? Like, hey, if anybody has service back home, please let me know. I'd like to check on my parents. And this lady, sweet lady named Linda, she definitely checked on them. So it's to see everybody come together. And when you started seeing those airlifts, the C-17s come in and just bring it, you see all them people, many hands make light work, right? And just come together. And that's all you have in those situations is each other,
Yeah, no, there's something for that for sure. There's something about those rural communities where the bedrock of the community is your hard work and your individual contributing to the team. Yeah. How did that prepare you for the military? How'd you end up getting into the Air Force and then working your way over to the special ops side?
Yeah, no problem. So I when I was 17, call it 17 and a half, in my senior year in high school, my dad gives me the cliche talk. He saw me going nowhere with my life, and honestly, I was going nowhere, making bad decisions, and I'm sort of doing the wrong thing. And he's like, it's time to either get a job, go to college, or get out when you graduate. And at this point, I'd talked to a Navy recruiter, and he's talking about being on a boat for 6 months, then an Army recruiter, and didn't want to do that. So at that point, I talked to my dad about sort of the quality of life of the Air Force, the good TDYs, good chow halls, and golf clubs, and all that sort of image that people think all that stuff.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Yeah, man. And so there I was, July 18th of 2000 on my first fixed wing flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to San Antonio, Texas. And, I sort of elevated into the special operations side. I started out my first 5 years as a weapons loader on the F-15 Strike Eagles. So basically that's a guy that loads the bombs and missiles, for the air-to-air missiles and the air-to-ground bombs for those guys. And I did second 5 years as an Air Force firefighter and went to the Lewis F. Garland Fire Academy there in Texas. I think it's San Angelo, Texas, and did that. An awesome community, man. Some of my best moments of my life was in that firehouse, being there 24 hours with the guys, right? And then finally I was at home at a pizza joint, man, on leave, actually, and I was with some friends, and I look out in the book. I call it the same cracks in the road, right? Like the same cracks in the road that have been there my whole life. And I was like, man, you can't take nothing with you, man. I tell people there's no hearse behind a U-Haul, right? Like I want to be remembered for doing something awesome, with my career. When my grandkids ask about it one day, and well, I want to leave cracks, I want to leave craters, man. And that's when I decided to become an aero gunner in the mighty AC-130 gunship.
What was that process like for you?
It was definitely
because you're, let me stop you real quick. I'm sorry about that, Anthony. Because you're already comfortable. You're like 10 years into a career. And one of the things that kills dreams is comfort, right? Like you're halfway to retirement. You're probably doing pretty good on your second career, right? The firefighting side. It could be easy to cruise, to get promoted, move up the ranks, and stay there. But how did you say, wait, no, I want to kind of start over and do this again?
Yeah, and I had read a book too around this time. It was called Chosen Soldier by Dick Couch. And the very beginning of that book, there's the Bible verse, Isaiah 6:8, the send me verse, right? And this is way before the movie Fury and all that made that verse sort of famous. But I was like, I have been sitting on the sidelines, and like I wanted to make to serve my country the highest capacity that I could, and I realized, like physically, like, I'm trying to be a realist. I couldn't be an operator. Water's sort of a game changer in itself, but what I could do is provide that close air support and make sure those guys get home. And so that was my why, man, and that was my drive at that point, and the whole thing took about a year, from start to finish to get checked out.
What was it like knowing you made it there? What was it like when you got through all the training and you accepted that first mission? You realized, like, man, this is the proverbial tip of the spear. Like, we're the front lines of the front lines.
Oh yeah, and it didn't really hit me till my first actual shoot there in northeastern Afghanistan, and we had been done weeks, maybe even a month at that point of just basically ISR type stuff, and basically doing nothing. The only rounds we had shot on this this night before this was the tweak rounds for the 105 millimeter, and what that is like basically just like any weapon, you have to spend a few rounds to line your sights in. Well, same thing with the 105 howitzer. So we, I think 7-8 rounds. I was reloading the rack, and daytime's coming up, and it's very rare for a gunship to fly during the day. There's like waivers that have to happen and stuff like that, and so the pilot comes back to the gun deck, and he's like, hey, there's a Green Beret team. They're pinned down, taking Dishka and RPG fire. And he's like, who's with me? And of course, we all, in our own way, said, send me, right? And I just remember, man, we're flying over this operation, and the daytime's coming up. And I had my Monaco MVG on. Back then, we didn't have the two ones. But I was looking out the scanner window, and I just see two bright flashes, boom, boom, the RPGs go off. And went back, and I got on the 40 mil Bofors, and, I think we shot about 67 rounds, give or take. And what it was there was these 3 Taliban guys that had explosive packs on shooting our ground guys, our Green Berets. And, I remember when the dust settled, like man, I had the honor and privilege to do more for my country in an hour and a half at that point than I'd done my whole life, So that's a awesome responsibility, man, and I loved it, and I always chased that feeling,
Yeah, and we'll get into chasing that feeling later, because I think that's one of the things that sometimes harms us in certain lines of work, is we're always trying to replicate that feeling that we can't get unless we're there.
Correct.
But let me ask you this, Anthony. What's something that, so a lot of our community is civilian, a lot of our community is serving their communities in different ways. What's something you wish they would know about that special ops aviation community and just what you guys were doing over there in general that maybe they don't get to see through media or mainstream channels?
I would say definitely the fact that we're all just very normal men and women doing very uncommon things, right? Just the nature of the gunship mission. I mean, that is your job, is to take human lives, right? But to understand that it was for something, it was for our brothers on the ground, right, and sisters, make sure they got home. It's just that the normal part of of combat, that we're all having to, at some way, face all this, and being able to turn that switch off is not often as easy as people think it would be,
Yeah, that's a good point, right? And that's I think sometimes we look at other people and we think like they have it easy or they're special, and you're right, man. Like all of us at some level are going through the same things, right? Like you got bills to pay, you got dinner to make, you got to wonder if you took out the trash or not.
Yeah, there was this place I loved in the 16th. I put it in the book there. I'd have my flight kit, my helmet, and my mask and stuff. And I remember we'd walking out. This is the squadron back home, right? And right before I went to the plane, man, look, no matter what I had going on in my life, like the finances, the emotional, back when I was single type stuff, right? And, just whatever I had going on in my life, I left it right there. And there was, when you pass through that door, it said in Old English, we who pass through these portals stand tall. And to me, man, that was always more symbolic than like a Notre Dame hitting the play like a champion tonight. That sign, that was that sign for me, But yeah, it was just I call it an arena. You're in an arena at that point once you get in that aircraft,
Yeah, for sure. It's time to separate from everything else. So let's stay on that topic, because that's interesting, right? Because like we compartmentalize our work life and the things we have to do at work, and then you have your family and stuff. You try to keep them separate, but over time you can build up walls that make it hard to bring the two together and reconcile them. So could you share with me, was there a moment when you realized that the job was taking more from you than you thought it was?
I would definitely say, because sort of my situation, I did multiple gunship deployments, went to HH-60 Pavehawks, did a pretty nasty casevac, and then my last, call it 2.5 years, I went back to gunships because I wanted to do that before my sunset tour, right? And, and I remember at this point I'd had my kid, and I think I put her through, that was the 4th deployment for her, and just, there was always this thing where guys would fear like getting home and like their kids wouldn't recognize them, right? That's a very real thing you worry about, and so yeah, I would say like it does take your time away from you, and I tell people I always try to be cautious with that, because like when we sign up for this life, right, our wife and kids sign up too, so they're going through it too. So I would say the biggest thing that it took away from me was just that time, right? But luckily I was never in a situation where my kid definitely recognized me. So
yeah, so talk us through that, right? Because many of us will never be in that situation. So you're overseas and you're bonded with the men and women that are doing the fighting with you and serving with you, and You have doubts about your family. You're wondering what they're going through. How do you guys support each other over there? How was that? What was that like?
You talk about like the guys I flew with and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of so there is downtime. A lot of pranks come with that downtime, man. And, yeah, man, you name it, we probably did it to each other. And back then, we lived in the bee huts, basically these plywood huts in Bagram. You'd have six or seven people in one hut, and man, it's just a lot of I have to say dick and fart jokes and pranks and the camaraderie part of it, right? But at the same time, you're holding each other accountable to get up, work out when you don't want to work out, and it's time to work and go on a mission. You make sure everybody's mind's right at that point.
Yeah. Now, and those are some of the memories you take with you, right? Is just the goofy times you have, and that's some of the stuff you miss, right? Is not necessarily doing the thing, but like all the time you had and getting to know each other. And I know for at least me, when I think back on my career, like some of the things I miss most are just the fun little things we did that had nothing to do with the actual job. They were just with each other.
Yeah, and there's you know each other so well too, right? Like like when something's not right, like or someone's not their 100% self that day, like those type of men and women will ask you, they won't be like, hey, like Anthony, how's it going? They'll be like, hey, how you doing, really, man? Like what's going on? Because they know you so well, and you know them, and I tell people, like, when it comes to friendship and stuff like that, right? We all have heard of iron sharpens iron, right? But I tell people, surround yourself, especially when you get out, with those same four quarters. Keep in touch with them. The 100 pennies mean nothing. Those seasonal friends, right? But the ones that count are those four quarters.
Yeah, that's good. Let's talk about your book, Anthony, Moonchild. And in that book, you talk about the battles that don't make it into the mission reports, right? The ones that are going on inside of us that nobody really knows about. What would you say was one of the first signs you knew that something in you was breaking or not where you wanted it to be?
I would say, like, I did my last deployment on my 20th year mark, like on the dot that day. Like, I sort of wanted to do that, and I was back on gunships at this point. And I remember we had been to Iraq, and I don't even think we shot once in 90 days. And it was so slow, and that whole purpose, I could see it degrading, right? And my identity was leaving me. And I got back, and sort of, to be honest with you, out of anger, right, and like just not having a why anymore. I felt like I hit the retirement button, and once I hit that, I couldn't take it back, And there's this realization, man, that I had, when you out-process these situations, the Air Force or military, you get your infamous DD-214, right? And I'm filling out all this paperwork, part of my last time, And it basically, when you leave, man, there's no door handle on the other side of that door, right? So you can walk out, but you can never truly get back into this thing, right? And so with that, especially that last year, I went down jumped off a cliff with drinking, bro, like, what was a weekend drinking habit turned into like a pint a night, right? Like, or more, and sleeping pills, you name it, to go to sleep. And, my wife was like, hey, like, I see what's going on. It's either the bottle or me and your daughter. And, by the grace of God, I chose my family, man. So at that point, I started getting prolonged exposure therapy with the USOCOM, the MFLAX, the psychologist. And what that is basically is like, you start writing out the situation, right? And then you get to where you could talk about it, be comfortable being uncomfortable, sort of like we're doing now, right? To where it's like, nothing at that point, just to talk about it. But it was definitely a blessing, and I'm glad I got it.
Yeah, let's talk, man. You brought up something that I've shared with other veterans and groups we talk with a lot, and that is, you had a great imagery the way you said it, and that is that when you walk out, there's no door handle to come back. And I think that is, it's so hard to get over, right? To realize, like, as soon as I walk out, like, I'm not even allowed back in here. Like, this is never going to be the same again. What do you wish we could have done that would have maybe changed that experience for you, that we could learn from and change for the next guy that's going to walk away tomorrow or in 10 years or 15 years to make that process smoother?
Yeah, I would say to realize, like, hey, this was a chapter in my life in the book, right? And that the new mission continues on, right? And that's finding those exciting moments in the calm, that's being the best dad I could be, best husband I could be, best friend, man, best wingman I could be to someone. That's the new mission now, right? And I sort of had to get over myself a little bit too with this, like, hey, this machine goes on, like there's going to be another aircraft takeoff tomorrow, right? And I'm not going to be on it. However, I'm gonna keep living my life, and just be happy with that,
Yeah, that's so tough, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a tough challenge, and I just don't know. Clearly, we can do something better for our veterans, right? Especially as we continue to fight these prolonged wars now or these conflicts. Like since 2001, we've pretty much been fighting somewhere around the world. So everybody's coming home, or most people are coming home combat vets,
Right.
and that's a universal thing I hear is they leave and they're like, man, I wasn't prepared to walk back into this world. Like I wasn't quite ready. So I don't know what we could do better.
Yeah, that's a very hard, like you said, 20-something-year long question now, right? And it's really hard to answer because, like, to give someone their purpose and identity back that's something that God can do, right? But it's sort of hard for us to do that for each other. Anything outside of like maybe getting us a somewhat related job, like I sort of walked into, but yeah, that's a hard question to answer, and I don't know the true full answer to that yet. But hopefully we just keep digging until we find it.
What about this answer? What about this, Anthony? What if somebody out there is listening and they're gonna walk away in the next week, year, or month? What advice would you give them? Maybe your advice is what they need. What would you share with that person if they're about to walk out?
I would say, like, wear your emotions on your shoulder, like they say. If you got something going on, communicate that to your same brothers and sisters you worked with, right? Like, I tell people there's an acronym sort of I use. It's called Aviate, Navigate, Communicate. Like so first make sure you're keeping control, right? You're steady flight, right? Navigate. It's good to know where you come from, but really it's more important to know where you're going, right? Because you can't. If I look back, I'm lost, bro. And then communicate. If someone doesn't know, what's going on, then they can't help you. So I would say that.
Dude, I love that, right? And it's like what I use an analogy a lot of is if we don't know where the hell we're going, it's like being on a road trip. You're just in your car, you're driving fast, you're burning gas, but you don't know where you're headed. Oh, yeah. And I think that's so good. And I like what you said there, right? Because we can use the same strategies we enjoyed in the service that helped us align mission and purpose. We can apply them to our lives if we just see it, right? If we just take a minute and reflect on, like, wait, my mission's now me. Yeah. It's my family.
Yeah, that's a very good point. What's the old saying? Know thyself, right? Like, until you have that sort of man in the mirror discussion, like, you don't really know yourself. You know what I mean? And you find out a lot about yourself through prayer and then through trials, sort of what you were saying earlier, right? And, like I was getting at too, is like, if I didn't have any scars or hiccups on the way, like who would want to read a book about that, right? Like there's something beautiful about perseverance, man,
All right, let me talk to you. I love that, right? Because I share that all the time, too. I call it turning a chapter in your life, right? Because, if I told you, hey, Anthony, I had this life and I did this really hard thing and I showed up and went perfect and I learned nothing, you'd be like, dude, that's boring as hell. Yeah. But, like, tell me when you fell down. Yeah. So let me ask you this, Anthony. How did you find the ability to give yourself grace to move past the bottle and the pills instead of holding on to it and being like, I'm mad at myself, like going, wait, I could be better? How did you find that grace to allow yourself to flip the page and move on?
So that, man, I'm so glad you asked this. I don't hardly ever talk about this, and I should talk about it more, but there was a point in this same year where I lost my left lung, a paralyzed hemodiaphragm, and, I was feeling sorry for myself. I was mad at God, and I was asking God, why does you let, bad things happen to good people, the age-old question. And, I talked to a pastor about it, and he's like, listen, Anthony, he's like, life circumstances can make you bitter or better. The choice is yours. And I knew at that point that I'm not going to choose bitter. I refuse to be mad and sad all the time and lick my wounds, right? Like, I want to get better. Each and every day, that's a different task,
Yeah, dude. But I love that, man. And I love when we have honest moments with ourselves, right? When we don't just go to the mirror and be like, oh, I got it all together today. Like, I'm perfect. And we're like, no, I'm flawed. I'm hurting. I'm struggling. And I can be better. What was that conversation like for yourself when you were like, okay, no more booze, no more pills. I'm going to be better. What was that like? What did you tell yourself?
It was just facing that fact and admitting to myself, right? First, was the first 12 step of recognizing I have a problem, right? With I was a raging alcoholic, right? Like facing that demon, That's the thing about demons in the night, man. You know, they'll go away if you realize you turn around and face them, right? And I would be lying, Jerrod, if I didn't tell you there wasn't a spiritual side to this healing. You know, I'd realized too. Yes, I went to see a psychologist, and I had great friends. All that's great, but I turned to everything, including the bottle and pills, like you said, except for God. You know, and what He did for me in that moment, getting better, was really, I realized at that point, being in isolation with my thoughts, with my self accountability. And then He gave me elevation, you know. So definitely that isolation before elevation is what I like to tell people.
So talk to me about writing that book, right? Because I was there a chapter or a moment that you wrote, or that was just the hardest to put on paper, where you're like, man, this is getting me.
Yeah, I would definitely say the Castevac part. You know, I think in aviating or in any job, really, it's not what you do, it's what you don't do that haunts you. You know, and you know, it was June 8th, 2018, and we were in East Africa, and I tell people we saw the best side of combat search and rescue, because that's the whole mission that others may live, right? We saved 5 guys, but then one American, one Eagle, when he got back to the operating table, unfortunately passed away. And that was just everything that comes with that, the senses, and then the realization, like, that someone gave their all, right? And I didn't know what sacrifice was to that day. Like, one of the Air Force Corps values is service before self, and I'll be honest, I didn't know what that was till that day. And you realize, like, that's someone's brother, someone's son, someone's friend, you know. So that's definitely, it definitely sticks with you. I'll say that.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I'll never forget that, right? Like, I'll never forget when I deployed to two C-141s collided midair and crashed. And we got sent out for search and rescue, and just finding, now it wasn't the bodies that got to me, man, but what I'll still never forget, finding the wallet out in the field, and it was open, and you could just see the pictures of his family and stuff staring at you, and being like, man, like he's never going to be there again.
Man. Yeah, and I think that's definitely the 5 cents part of it. You know, I remember there was a point where, like, you know, I was checking the aircraft for bullet holes, you know, and I go back to the front of the aircraft, and I see the aircraft commander, the head pilot, right, and he didn't have to say anything. I just knew that through his face what had happened, you know. And then I hear over the radio, like, one of the maintenance guys, like, I didn't know what this term meant. Sort of a car wash was code for, like, there's blood and guts in the cabin and stuff like that. They had to clean it up, you know, to be sanitary and stuff like that. And I lost it when I heard that, bro. You know, like, that was very hard to put in that book.
How did you allow yourself to move past it? Because that wasn't the end of your mission, right? Like, you just don't get to go home. You still gotta clean the plane. You gotta get ready, because there's gonna be somebody else that's counting on you. How did you balance the two of grieving and understanding, like, man, this is heavy, but also preparing to go back out?
Yeah, I would say I had to sort of turn into like a robot a little bit, man, you know, and take the emotions out of this combat for now. And that's, you can't always do that. It's always in the back of your mind, right? Especially after it happens. But, like, I had to turn that switch off, you know, just the feeling that I had that day, you know, and just to remember that, you know, now I know what the cost of freedom is. You know, I got to witness that, and how does this not happen again? You know, I want to be the guy to make sure this doesn't happen again, you know?
Yeah, and it's that switch that gets us in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? If we don't realize we're constantly flipping it on and building up these barriers to all the emotions we have, right, so we can stay on the mission, which you have to do, right? You have to do that in certain frames, but then other times you got to be able to get past that. And how has writing that book been impacting you moving past and moving forward?
Yeah, I would definitely say helping is healing, you know, like, you see a lot of the texts and the emails and the phone calls from people I used to work with, right? And the same, you know, loss of identity, the same dealing with traumatic events, you know, it's all very common, you know, and you realize, like, if one person gets help from reading this book, right, that's a blessing, that's a win, you know. And it's, like I said, we're all very normal men and women. It's not if, it's when this sort of thing happens, right? And that's how you face it, man, is you pay it forward. And I tell people, when you bleed it out on the page, you feel a lot better, you know.
What was that process like of writing for you? When did you decide to write the book, and what fears did you have to face in putting it together?
Yeah, no problem. So it first sort of came to my head, I guess, when I was getting the therapy, the prolonged exposure, and part of that process was you're writing it out, right? And then, so I had at least the bad part, right? Like everything on paper, and then I had a memory, right? And then my psychiatrist was like, you should tell the story like 100 times, bro. And I was like, no, right? And when I got out, and I craved that bottle, like, man, like, I was like, I'm going to write, man. I'm going to write about all this, and if one person sees this and gets help, if you have one cell, right, you have to think that person maybe took something good away from your book and decided to get better. And
yeah,
and it was about a pen to paper to book in hand, like 7 months. And to be honest with you, it is a very short read. It's like 2 hours. And once I had at least what I thought was enough for a book, man, I reached out on LinkedIn to a war journalist named Holly McKay, and I sort of talked to her on the phone after that and told her sort of my idea of the way I wanted to go with the book. And she's like, yeah, I'll do it, and basically there was a Word document back and forth, right? Hey, what do you really mean by this? And, what is this talking about? Because you know how military and jargon and acronyms, I had to find a way to get that out there in plain text, right? And she definitely did a good job of pulling the hard parts and the loud parts out loud for me. And then she recommended a publisher, Robbie Grayson, who did the hardware of the book. And I'm glad I did, man. It was an awesome process, and it's all worth the emails and texts you get from that.
What did you learn about yourself in that process, Anthony?
I learned that I could be vulnerable. I learned that it's okay to be vulnerable. I think that, it's when you keep stuff like that down, right? Those demons, like, they're going to grow like a cancer, bro. Like, until you give them air and you bring them to light, then they'll die.
Yeah. What would you? So now you got a daughter,
right?
What do you hope she understands about your story someday?
I would say that that I persevered, that I didn't quit. I didn't give up on life, and I decided to be the best man I could be for her mom and her, and to make sure that she wanted to live a life, boldly, with audacity and tenacity, and that, it's all part of the experience.
So now, you're working through this, you got your book out, you're impacting people. So what does peace look like for you now, Anthony? What does peace feel like to you?
I just honestly, I love the 9 to 5 part of it, as boring as that sounds. Like, I love being able to go into work to do a simulator, and I still get to see some of the same men and women I used to fly with. And it's awesome when that happens. And then go home at the end of the day, right? And the sun's still up, and hugging my daughter and my wife, it's sort of hard to put in words, but it is those exciting moments in the calm that keeps you going,
Yeah, and I think what I love hearing about that, Anthony, is you got an appreciation for the routine.
Oh, yeah.
Right, those moments that, like, are easy to skip past because we got something else to do or somewhere else to be, they mean more.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think the most valuable thing in the world, and sort of what you asked earlier, is time, right? That's the biggest thing you could give someone. And what's awesome about now is I can be present, right? I could be in my daughter's life, and that is, like I said, my biggest mission now, and my really only mission, But
yeah, and I love that you're using your voice to bring awareness and honest conversations around mental health for our military and veteran communities. What made you step into that role, and when did you realize, like, I want to say almost you had a responsibility to use your voice to help others? When did you realize that?
I did real honestly at one point started counting all the the men that I knew that unfortunately took their lives, man, and I can either sit on the sidelines again, or I can get in the fight for this, and make a difference, and there has been 3 a.m. phone calls, where you talk someone off a ledge, and those conversations have to happen. That's how you prevent it, and I would say the biggest realization is like, it's so common. Like, this is so common, like, between first responders and military, right? And it's not often if, it's when. And I tell people, man, like, one of my favorite quotes is, like, I heard the other day, is like, God will put you back together in front of those who broke you. And I like to say, God will put you back together in front of what broke you. Whatever demon, whatever vice, whatever trauma that is, he's got it.
So you said something interesting there. These conversations need to happen. So what do you think? What are those conversations we're still missing, right? Because you're absolutely right. When more veterans and law enforcement specifically, more cops kill themselves than are killed by any bad guys on the street around the country. Yet all of our training is towards external threats, and the biggest one's still internal.
Right.
So what conversations do you think we're not having?
I would say just there's still a little bit of stigma there. It has gotten better. Don't get me wrong. As far as seeking mental health in these type of professions, right? Like I don't know if you guys have like a do not arm order you can get from your superiors or something like that, right? But like for a ground guy in the military, it'd be like they can't carry a weapon. As a flyer, as an aviator, we call it DNIF, duties not to include flying, and no one wants to hear that from their commander or whoever says that, right? But at the same time, man, if the conversation needs to be had is like if you're not healthy, then you're more dangerous that way, than people's lives. You have to be able to trust each other with your best friend's life, right? And if you can't mentally or spiritually do that at the moment, then you're a threat yourself at that point, So definitely the hard conversation to have,
What about this? Let me throw this out at you, Anthony, because I agree with what you're saying. And, I think we're getting better. I don't think we're anywhere near where we need to be in any of these fields. But what about this, right? You tell me I'm allowed to go talk to somebody. I'm allowed to not be good today. And then I get a do not arm letter, or in law enforcement, civilian law enforcement, called not fit for duty. So now I'm not fit for duty. So I get pulled to a assignment where I don't interact with the public. I'm not armed. I'm just doing like reports and basic stuff because I sought help.
Right.
But then the same people that told me to do that talk shit about me or tease me about it.
Yeah.
And when I come back, I carry this stigma of, he wasn't good last week, so we got to keep an eye on, right? I mean, I think that's sometimes we're our own barriers to people getting help because we don't allow them to get help and then have a clean slate when they come back. We don't give them the grace to acknowledge the courage it took to get the help.
Right.
You almost hold it against them.
Yeah, and I think, there's different types of leaders, right? And all this is really leadership and management type, problems at this point. And, I think that what I look for in a leader, right, is empathy, and I tell people empathy is the cornerstone of respect and trust, and maybe with empathy, right, like you wouldn't tell that guy that, okay, he went to seek help. He's human. He's normal, right? Like, yeah, for those people in those spots, whoever that may be, to realize – it's not if, it's when this has to happen sometimes, and it's all part of it, some downtime. But I would hate to tell someone they couldn't do their job. I would hate to face that or get told that, and when it happens, it is, embarrassing, and, you wonder what people say and stuff like that. But it definitely, whoever holds that, that crown needs to realize that and maybe not go for the jugular right off the bat and just take someone's weapon away, right? Let them keep doing the mish, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm torn on that because a lot of times the issues that cause the way we're treated that keeps us from seeking the help we say we need or we think we need isn't our bosses. It's not the generals. It's not the chief.
Yeah.
It's the men and women right alongside of us.
Yeah.
That don't give each other grace.
Yeah, and I think with anybody that would talk shit about somebody getting help on the your tactical level, right? Like, would you really want to fight beside that person anyway, right? Would you want to call them friend anyway? You know what I mean? Like, if they're going to talk shit for you for trying to better yourself. So, yeah, so that should never happen. Like somebody you call your brother, they should never do that, And if they're doing that, then how you fix that, I don't know, to be honest with you. But
Well, I think you're right, man. I think you got to look at the circle of influence you have, right? Like, man, you're supposed to be my friend. Like, we're supposed to be willing to die for each other. And you can't give me grace here, and I can't give you grace. I think it starts with, kind of like you were talking about, it starts with looking in a mirror at ourselves. Are we modeling the behavior we want?
Correct, yeah.
Are we allowing people around us to get help and still lift them up and have honest conversations? And that's one of the things I always try to share, Anthony, is like, don't wait for nobody else to be the change you think needs to happen. Like, it starts with us.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I love about what you're doing. It starts with your book. It starts with your conversation. It starts about your relationship with your wife and your daughter. Right. Nobody's going to fix that but you. Just like your dad said now, back in the mountains, right? Nobody's coming to fix that.
Yeah, man, I love how you tied it together, and I never really looked at that in that light, to be honest with you, man. But you're right, man. It is an internal dialogue, and it all starts with those three words: know thyself.
Yeah, and man, not everybody gets to be inside your fence,
right,
Anthony. Not everybody deserves a seat at your table. I like that analogy, right? Like, They got to earn that.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we let people in our table that don't deserve to be there no more. And sometimes that person that don't deserve to be there is us because we're letting ourselves down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard thing to do, too. Like, if I couldn't imagine, like, seeking help and someone bashing me for it, right? And I was lucky enough to where I had, my 4 quarters encouraged me, including my family, right? But, yeah, I don't know how you keep, like, you wouldn't know someone's going to say something like that until they say it, right? Or maybe your friend told you they said it. But when that happens, you got to cut that fat, right? You got to cut that cancer out of your life, man,
I think it starts, well, hopefully some of it starts with us having conversations like this and people listening go, wait, you know what? Am I treating somebody like that? Let me check that. Let me be honest with myself. Am I treating somebody poorly? Or am I allowing people to treat me poorly? And how do I fix that? But I think that the first step is just what you're doing, my friend, and that is sharing the story, getting it out there, and letting people know that they're not alone. That, like, everybody's going through something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it's, like I said, it's not if, it's when where, that conversation is going to happen with yourself, And there is the 22 a day we always talk about, right? And even 1 a day is too much. And I hope one day as a nation, at least, like we get our veterans and first responders the help they need with no reprisal or whatever the word is for that. You know what I mean?
100%. Like when I watch what we spend on things around the world, and our veterans still have to go through a ridiculous process to get help,
oh, yeah.
It just blows my mind what we're doing. But let me ask you this, Anthony. As you think about the next chapter in your life, what's moving you forward? What's like that magnetic pull that's guiding you? You're like, man, I'm heading to this spot.
Yeah, to be honest with you, this podcast thing is sort of addictive, man. And I know I mentioned earlier, like I made myself do this, right? Like I made myself get out in the open. And it started with a book, then talking on air, right? And I don't know, I just love sharing a common message with people that I know that are struggling with the same thing. And I think God gives us all, every collision happens for a reason, right? It's not a coincidence. And I think God makes these sort of things happen to spread some light in the world, be the light in someone's day.
Yeah. So you think about podcasting or what?
It's crossed my mind, man, but I definitely want to, what I really love to do is try the book to film thing. And I'm doing this other thing called Operation Song, where like they pair you with a country music artist and you write a song. And the guy I reached out to, it's probably the second time I've ever talked about this, man. His name's Matt Stillwell, but he's a country music singer. And ironically, his mom was my 3rd grade teacher. And so he agreed to do it. And he let me hear a taste of the song the other day, and I loved it, man. He's a talented dude. And you sort of see these words that everything, my favorite word is perseverance, and I talk about it in the book there. And you see that come out in the music, man. That's an awesome feeling, man.
Dude, good for you. So you're writing some country songs, Anthony. You didn't even have that in your bio, dude. Songwriter.
Well, yeah,
I love it.
This is very pretty fresh, Trust me, he read the book and he's putting the words in the song, and I don't have a musical bone in my body, man, but yeah, awesome experience so far.
Dude, I love it, man. Good for you for like doing things, man. And
thanks, brother.
Yeah, man. It's I appreciate your time and getting to share the stories with you and learn from you. Where can our audience follow you? Where can they get a book?
Yeah. So my Instagram page is all lowercase Marco_Brolo21. And then as far as books, if you look up Moonchild: The Roots and Wings of a U.S. Air Force Combat Special Missions Aviator, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and as well as Trademarker Media.
Nice. And sales are going good for you?
Yeah, it's pretty good. A lot better than, to be honest with you, I was expecting at first. Yeah, so I'm gonna keep digging, man, and keep getting it out there. So
I love it. As I get ready to wrap up with you today, Anthony, when you look at the man you are today, what are you most proud of?
I would say that I'm gonna tell this story with my first flight on the AC-130 gunship, right? If I can. So my first flight, man, it went so bad to where the instructor said something to the effect of, like, you're the reason I have to breathe seatbelts on airliners. And, it went that bad, right? So towards the end of this flight, man, he asked me, he saw me licking my wounds, feeling sorry for myself, right? And he's like, what's the most important word in the dictionary? And I was like, I don't know. I don't even know where I'm at right now. And he said, perseverance. And he's like, I want you to think about what that word means to you. Show up next flight ready to fight. And after he told me that, man, that's the ignition I needed. And I would say, I'm proud of the fact that I just didn't lay down, that I didn't take my own life, that I didn't keep drinking, that I decided to choose better over bitter.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's what I want the community to take, right? Is like the guy gave you one little thing, and I bet that guy's probably used that same line on students over and over, and has no idea the impact it made on you. And that's the thing for us. Like when we take time to invest in somebody else, we don't know the impact we'll create for them.
Yeah, I've actually talked to him too. He was the first. I think he was the first one to leave me a review on my Amazon page, and I got to talk to him, and he's like, "Yeah, man," he's like, "It really put you back at the aircraft," and he loved that I put it in there. But it was, I never asked him how many times he used it, because I sort of wanted it to be like, a special moment.
Man.
Special moment God put in my life for a reason, right? So,
yeah, no, I love it. If for someone that's listening today, Anthony, feels like they're in their own valley right now, that's maybe struggling to get up and get moving, what would you want them to hear from you?
I would say that, in these situations, especially with flying, everything can be going against you, the emergency procedures, the weather, the communications, the threats. In those moments, man, you don't get to fall, man, you get to rise, man. And that's sort of why I chose the moon. On the darkest nights, that's when it burns the brightest. And Henry Ford once said that no matter what you're going through, right, through trials, everything, troubles, that an aircraft takes off against the wind, not with it.
I love it. Anthony, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been an honor to share your story and to learn about you, man. And I'm excited to bring this story to light in our community, and appreciate what you're doing. And thank you for having the courage to use your voice to impact others.
Thank you, Jerrod. It's a real privilege and honor to be here. Like I said, man, I wouldn't miss this for the world. Thank you.
When you're training with purpose, your fueling can't be an afterthought. That's why I use Never Second, the simplest, most reliable system I have found for staying energized, hydrated, and steady through their long efforts. Their C-Series carbs take the guesswork out of performance. No stomach drama, no complicated mixing, just clean, consistent fuel that actually works when the miles get long. If you want to train with more intention and recover without feeling wrecked, check out Never Second. Click the link in the show notes to get dialed in. And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.